Welcome to Greentree Approvals and Alerts. In this video we're going to look at stopping the users by aborting the save on a record. So in this particular system I've predefined a rule that basically stops any user from changing a supplier's bank account details unless it's one particular user. So if I come into the supply maintenance and I load computers and parts here, and I'm not logged in as a user who's allowed to change the bank account details. Now at this point I'll actually change something else. So let's say I change their address from factory 12 to factory 14 and save that supplier. You can see it happily saves the supplier as it normally would in Greentree. Now if I reload that supplier and I come to the cash and banking tab and I actually alter the bank account on the supplier this time and hit save, you can see there an error has come up, and this error is actually raised by Approvals and Alerts. Only Angela is allowed to alter the bank account details on suppliers. Your change cannot be saved. So let's now have a look at how we'd set up a rule to actually stop a user from changing the bank account details on a supplier. So into rule maintenance we go, and of course the class we want this particular rule to activate upon is the supplier class. And when it's form driven, on new or changed supplier. Under our what to do tab, within here, one of the predefined conditions we have for classes is when an attribute changes value. So if you choose that particular one, and here I'm going to select the attribute of bank account number, and I'm actually not going to fill in old value and new value. Basically what I'm saying here is if the bank account number changes in any way, no matter what the old value was or the new value was, and by leaving that blank, that's what this will achieve. And at the same time I also want to check the user who's actually doing it. So I'm going to say the logged in user is not Amanda. So Amanda's the person who's actually allowed to do it. So if it's not Amanda, I want this rule to fire. So if we just recap those conditions, when the bank account changes and the user is not Amanda, this rule will fire. And what do we want to occur? So if we jump over to our Actions tab, what we want to have happen is the aborting of the save. So that's at the top, again a predefined action. If I click that in there, now it defaults with some reason text and we can put our own in there. The only user that can change the supplier's bank account details is Amanda. Your change cannot be saved. And that's basically how you set up a rule to stop everyone from changing the bank account details on a particular supplier except for Amanda. Okay, let's look at another example now, and that is where a user is doing accounts payable invoice entry, and we want to prevent them posting against certain general ledger accounts. So the user comes into AP invoice entry as they normally would. They choose their supplier, and they start entering their GL line items. Now on the first line I'll select any old account the user is actually allowed to post against. There we go, wages is fine. Type in a price. And line 1's done. Now let's on the second line choose an account that the user is actually not allowed to post against. I'm actually going to use two rules in conjunction with each other here. First of all, an instant alert pops up, just so they know while they're doing their invoice, you cannot post to this account from an AP invoice, just warning them. Now the user may simply click past that and not change the account, and type in the price and go to save the invoice. However, upon saving the invoice, I've got Approvals and Alerts again checking all the accounts on all the line items, and again it's found that invalid account and said you cannot save this invoice as you have selected a GL account that AP is not allowed to post to. Now at this point the invoice is not saved, but it's not cleared either, so the user has the ability at this point in time to simply choose a valid GL account that they actually want to post against. So simply by changing the account there on the screen and now save the invoice, it will go through quite happily. So let's now have a look at how I got all that to work. Now first of all what I did was in General Ledger, if I just load a General Ledger account here, you can see on the Custom tab I've actually added a new field called AP Posting Not Allowed. On GL accounts where it isn't allowed, I've simply gone to those accounts and ticked that on. Now that's one way of doing that. Of course I could have used trees to group accounts together as well. So in Greentree there's often many ways to go about things. In this particular instance I just happen to use user fields to do it. Now in Approvals and Alerts, to enforce that, I've got two rules. Firstly, the instant alert. So as the user is actually entering the AP invoice, at the point they choose the GL account, I want to warn them that they shouldn't be choosing that particular general ledger account on this invoice. So to do that, I've based this on the GL account class. I've told the system it's an instant alert. And in my record selection criteria, I've grabbed the user field, as you can see down here, AP posting not allowed, and that's on the left-hand side. And if that is true, and they're in AP invoice entry, so I've got here when it's called from a certain form, and that being AP invoice entry, the action I want to have happen is display an instant alert. And that simply is you cannot post to this GL account from an AP invoice. So that's the first rule. That's the one that just gives them the warning. Now the second rule is the actual aborting of the save. So let's see how I've set that up. First of all, of course, it's based on the accounts payable invoice itself. And I've based it on when the invoice is first created or changed. On my What to Do tab, in my conditions, I have a record selection criteria. And what I've done there is gone down and found all line items and dragged them across. And then within a subquery, I've limited the class to the GL line item. Okay, that's really important because now I'm looking at the attributes available to a GL line item, not all line items. And that actually gives me access to my GL account. And within my GL account, of course, I'll now be able to see that user field, AP posting not allowed. So over here I've got my GL account, AP posting not allowed. If that's true, and if any are true, so it's going to go through all the lines, and if any are true, what do I want to have happen? And of course that is abort the save. So I've added abort the save as my action, and there's my message. You cannot save this invoice as you have selected a GL account that accounts payable isn't allowed to post to. And that's basically how you set up the two rules in conjunction with each other. Firstly, to warn the user what they're doing and choosing the GL account, and then if they ignore that at the time of actually saving the invoice, the system will stop them saving the invoice until they fix it.